your comments brief. Thank you.
Certainly. I didn't prepare a whole lot for tonight, so I will try to be brief, and I think we've hit a lot of the major points. My name is Sarah Wright, non-resident. We talked about unity and equality. We've talked about legal loopholes and perceptions. We've talked about marginalized communities and how they're treated in this country. So I would like to just maybe reiterate some of the data which I included in a very long email to y'all, and I apologize, I fancy myself a bit of a writer. There was a survey done in 2019 of nearly 34,000 non-religious people in the United States. And in that survey, they found that 31% mostly or always concealed their non-religious identity from members of their immediate family. Nearly half of participants mostly or always concealed their non-religious identity among people at work, 44%, and people at school, 42%. They found that people have to hide this non-religious identity largely because of the way non-religious people are treated in our society. And over the course of the past month, I think we've seen some of that. Statistically speaking, someone you work with on a daily basis is non-religious. That's the data. And we're trending more and more towards non-religious Americans are the fastest growing, quote, religious demographic in this country. A quote from one of the survey recipients said, "In the small city I am from, religion is a way of life, and anyone who comes along who doesn't toe the line is scary. And when people fear you unjustly, they can justify doing horrible things to you. It's scary to be an atheist in a small town." That's from a woman in Texas. And I'm from a small town of 1,400 people in the middle of cornfields in Illinois. I like to say we had no stoplights, 9 churches. It was corn and white folks as far as the eye could see. We had no diversity of race or religion. And I know what it's like to be marginalized, to be a minority person in a small town like that. I'm a trans person and I'm an atheist. And in small town America, that is not a good thing to be. So I would urge you again to consider those folks and the perspective of what our lives are like in this country and in this county and in this town. And I think that we've all spent enough time on this, so I would encourage you to again vote no and reconsider moving to a moment of silence only. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else that would like to speak?
I'm Charlene Bennett in city. It was kind of disheartening to hear the other same prayer tonight and to read the documents that you're going to be voting on. Someone's working very hard to make sure that Christian fundamentalism maintains a lock on the Lake Wales City Commission meetings. The documents you have are designed to continue to restrict your invocation to fundamental Christians by having one chaplain of that religion, and he can have a substitute if he's not here, but it has to be a clergy person, and it has to be someone in Lake Wales. And that kind of rules out rabbis and Muslims and everybody else. Pretty much guarantees that you will be violating the First Amendment because you will always have a fundamental Christian prayer. Jennifer Nanick, if she were here, could verify that I told her back in early March that I was planning to ask to give a secular invocation here. Then along came COVID and I just abandoned it for a while. But the proposed regulations that you're going to be voting on tonight would make sure that I never had a chance to do that. It's mostly Christians who want to do public prayer, and coupled with those new rules, things will just remain the same, and you will continue to disrespect the 40% that I talked with you about last time. The purpose of tonight's documents are clear. They'll be clear to anyone who wants to bring a lawsuit and to any court that might have to digest them. No matter how you disguise it, what is proposed still amounts to the establishment of one religion at city commission meetings. That's a violation of the First Amendment. Now, I know you all know that the Constitution doesn't include a God of any kind, never mentioned, and that God didn't even make it into the Pledge of Allegiance in 1954. And you probably know that the founding fathers were mostly deists and not Christians. They were scholars of the Enlightenment. They studied Hume and Descartes rather than the Bible or any other religious document. And they were raw with the ancestral stories of religious persecution from which their ancestors escaped. It was very important to them to see that that could never happen again in this country. And that was the source of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. They knew if any religion could get the least hold in government, that it was just a step forward then to moving to where they might be able to force their beliefs and behavioral restrictions on other people. So the best way to do away with it is just not to have any association between government and religion. And as you probably know, Justice Black was the first one to coin that phrase, the wall of separation between church and state. It's very important. An invocation by one predominant religion is the first step. It's what you're talking about here tonight. And it's offensive and it's scary to people like me. And most people like me are not ever going to speak up because they're fearful of ostracism and retribution. I'm scared of that also. I know many people who think as I do, even some who have commitments to the city in various ways, who work for the city, who get money from the city. They're not going to speak to you about this because they're too scared of ostracism and retribution of some kind. I ask you tonight that you do the right thing and represent everybody in this city. I ask you to honor the spirit and the intention of the First Amendment, and that you respect the 100% of the community that you were hired or elected to represent. And I'm not going to be able to finish, so thank you for listening.
Do we have anyone else that would like to speak at this time?
Joseph Richardson, not a resident. Some of the things that I was thinking about saying have been said very well, both by Sarah Ray and by Charlene Bennett. And once again, I'm very glad that there's a Lake Wales resident themselves who's standing up and explaining what it means, because there are a lot of residents who cannot, because of the fears that Sarah and Charlene have talked about. And that's why I'm here. As I told you last time, to speak for those who are not able to at this time. I'd like to add also a note about the phrase "the wall of separation." A lot of people know that Thomas Jefferson used it in his letter, in his response to the Danbury Baptists, I believe it was, when they wrote to him and said, "What is this new document? What is all this stuff going to mean to us?" And his response included this phrase encapsulating the Establishment Clause as a wall of separation. And the interesting thing about this is that a lot of people know that part. They don't know who the Danbury Baptists were actually complaining about. And it wasn't atheists or witches or anybody else. The Danbury Baptists were actually worried about the Danbury Congregationalists, another sect of Christianity in their community, and about whether the Congregationalists were going to take over and run the government as a Congregationalist government. And I might be extrapolating a little bit, but that is a little background for that. Regardless, as I said, I'm here today speaking for non-Christians like me who, for whatever reason, cannot yet speak for themselves. because they are out there. Odds are you even know some without realizing it. They may be your next door neighbor. They may be people you work with. They might even be your family members. It happens every single day. And I can attest to that because I was one of those people who, when I realized I couldn't believe anymore, was surrounded by pretty much 100% friends and family who were Christian and didn't know what to do. And it was a terrifying moment for me. And so these people like me are going to be here in Lake Wales. They're going to be everywhere. Mayor Foltz said in the workshop, the list is not going to exclude anyone per se. I believe that I explained in my letter to you earlier this week how it appears that you will be excluding people. And obviously, Ms. Bennett also believes that you're going to be excluding people. By voting for this resolution, you're saying, yes, I understand this resolution excludes some Lake Wales residents, but I think that those people, my neighbors, my friends, my family, my coworkers, deserve to be excluded because they don't practice the same beliefs that I do. If the city adopts this resolution, it becomes one more way in which the minority is rejected by the leaders who are sworn to protect them. This is one more signal to them that they are not wanted, one more nudge that silences them, one more way of driving them deeper underground, and one more reason for them to be afraid to be themselves. Don't do it. Don't be exclusionary. Instead, be leaders. Be leaders with the guts to do what is right. Be moral leaders. Be Americans. Embrace every single person in this city. Show that you care about every single constituent. Give them the equal rights and the equal access that is their due. And you will never have a reason to be concerned with the legal defensibility of your decisions. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else at this time? If there's no one else? Okay.
Nothing from our end, Mayor.
Okay, we've got one more, Dr. Ullom.
Okay. Yes. I wasn't prepared for this discussion, but I have some comments. And so we have a country where we have so many people trying to come in. And if these same people, they come from countries where there's atheism. They come from countries that don't honor the Lord. But why do they want to come here? They want to come here because there's freedom and there's blessings that we have here that they don't have elsewhere. Islam, hey, you can't even take a Bible into Saudi Arabia. You don't have you want to start a church someplace? Hey, forget it. We have freedom here. We honor a Lord who tells us to love Him and to love one another. That's everybody. And you want the best for them. And so all this is reflected in our invocation policy. We've always, for 233 years, our nation has had a time for our Lord. So the invocation is a time to honor Him. We believe in freedom of speech. So that's what we're practicing now. Hey, you can get up here and say anything you want to. And you guys are good to listen. Bless your hearts. I think we need to keep the invocation a special time to honor the one who's created us, the one who died for us. and one that tells us to love Him and to love one another. And I sincerely do that. And I feel that in my heart. I care for about each person here. I want the best for each person. Bless you guys. Let's keep our invocation for our Lord.
Do we have anyone else at this time that would like to speak?